Okay, let's unpack this. We've all been there.
Oh, absolutely.
You decide you're going to get serious about a new goal. I don't know, learning a language, maybe mastering complex software, getting a certification.
Something big, something that takes real effort.
Exactly. And the accepted wisdom, the default belief, is that serious learning requires this epic, almost heroic sacrifice of time.
The marathon session.
We're talking about those marathon study sessions, yeah. Canceling your Friday night plans,
Yeah.
sitting down for 5 or 6 hours straight, just grinding.
That sheer grinding effort until your brain genuinely feels like soup.
Yeah?
It's the common, almost celebrated belief that duration equals dedication. You know, people see the effort, they see the time log, and they just assume that progress is inevitable.
Of course. It feels like it should be.
But our mission today is to really challenge that deeply ingrained assumption. We're diving into sources from educational principles and cognitive science that prove why that heroic effort is often counterproductive.
So all that pain might not be gain.
A lot of the time, it isn't. We'll show you why studying a little bit, but often it's just fundamentally superior for consistency, for efficiency, and, most importantly, for long-term memory.
So we have a deep dive here based on these core psychological principles,
Yeah.
specifically how the brain handles energy, stress, habit formation.
That's right. And we're using deep learning, especially language acquisition, as our sort of main example.
And this research exposes a core paradox that I think frustrates so many motivated people. The source suggests that much of what we call studying is really just looking busy.
Right. While true learning, the kind that sticks, requires a very specific, low-stress mental state.
A state that those long-forced sessions actively destroy.
They absolutely destroy it. And that paradox is the silent killer of motivation. I mean, you get these high achievers, people who are used to pushing through pain.
Right, that's their whole model for success.
It is. So they log the hours, they feel the struggle, and they convince themselves they're succeeding, but the information just doesn't stick. Because their internal state wasn't conducive to memory consolidation. So before we can fix the problem, we really need to understand the faulty operating conditions they're imposing on their own brains.
We need to look inside that Saturday study session and see where the system, inevitably breaks down. So let's start with that scenario, the one laid out in the source material, because I feel like this is almost universally relatable. It's the ritual of the 5-hour Saturday plan.
It's such a beautifully constructed trap.
It really is.
And it begins with such positive intentions. I mean, you wake up, you're motivated, feeling disciplined, maybe even a little smug about the commitment you're making.
Oh, for sure. You're thinking, today, I'm going to cover 3 chapters. Today is 5 hours of pure, focused learning.
And that initial surge of motivation, it feels like genuine strength. It feels real.
And you execute the ritual perfectly. You open the book, you pull up the required online lesson, maybe you even cue up that background music that promises focus.
You prepare the whole environment, the lighting, the water bottle, that strong cup of coffee, your special tea.
Everything is just right. And the first 10, maybe even 25 minutes feel genuinely productive.
Oh, yeah. You're in the zone.
You're absorbing information, the notes are flowing, and you feel that sweet forward momentum.
But then, and the sources detail this so well, then comes the quiet collapse. It's insidious, because it doesn't happen with a big dramatic failure. It's a slow leak.
A slow leak. I like that. So around the 30-minute mark, maybe 45 for some people.
Yeah, for those with very high focus reserves. But for most, that initial freshness just evaporates. Your brain starts to feel heavy. It feels slow and resistant.
And this is the critical point, isn't it? Where your physical presence and your cognitive function just they decouple.
They completely separate. Your body is still sitting upright. Your eyes are dutifully scanning the lines of text.
But the part of your brain that's supposed to be processing new data, your working memory, is what? It's full?
It's full, it's fatigued, or it's simply clocked out. You're engaged in what looks like reading, but you finish a paragraph and realize you couldn't recount the central idea, let alone any details.
You hear the words from the tutorial, but they're just noise. They don't stick.
You're present in body, but your brain has left the room. And this is where we need to bring in the concept of attentional fatigue.
Okay.
Sustaining intense focus demands metabolic energy. It's a biological process. And after a relatively short period, and for most of us, that's much shorter than an hour, the prefrontal cortex just cannot maintain the filtering required to keep distractions out and complex information in.
So, okay, if the brain stops actively processing new info after, say, 45 minutes, how do we explain the person who's still sitting there grinding away for 5 hours.
And that is the hidden problem. That's what guarantees long-term frustration. The long study sessions, they often continue after learning has entirely stopped.
They just keep going.
The learner hits that wall, they realize the effort isn't paying off anymore, but then they look at their watch and remember they committed to 5 hours.
And they don't want to feel like a failure.
Exactly. They don't want to feel like they wasted their morning or broke their commitment, so they push, they force, and they grind for another 3 or 4 hours of just vastly diminished returns.
I have to push back a little here, though. I mean, for a lot of high achievers, forcing themselves past that initial resistance is, well, it's how they achieve things. You push through the wall when you're running, so why not in learning?
That's a great question, but the analogy doesn't really translate. Pushing through a wall and running uses pain to elicit a physical response, often a release of endorphins, right?
Right.
Learning is different. When the brain senses input that is draining, straining, and forced, it instinctually closes down its receptive pathways.
It gets defensive.
It gets defensive, exactly. It stops absorbing information because the cost is just too high. Deep learning is not about force, it's about receptivity. And if the input feels like a prolonged energy drain, the system just conserves resources by minimizing intake.
Which leads directly to what the source material calls the trap of fake progress. I think this is one of the most important takeaways from this whole deep dive.
It's absolutely crucial. Externally, long sessions look robust, they look disciplined. You can tell your friends, I studied for 5 hours today, I finished 7 lessons.
And you feel productive in the moment because you covered ground.
That feeling of coverage and discipline, that right there is the fake progress.
What's the internal reality? What's happening inside the brain?
The internal reality is that your brain is logging those 4 hours after the collapse, not as learning, but as a grueling, slow, and hard experience. The majority of that time is spent just spinning wheels in a completely unproductive cognitive state.
So nothing transfers effectively to long-term memory.
Nothing. Or very little. We're talking about the memory that stays with you for days, weeks, or years. You've basically confused input time with actual processing time.
And the result is?
Yeah.
What? Just confusion and disappointment.
Profound disappointment. You made the sacrifice, you committed the energy, you followed the schedule, but tomorrow, when you try to recall the material, most of it is simply gone.
And that's so frustrating.
It's brutal. And the lesson here is that effort alone does not guarantee neural change. If your mental state is one of exhaustion or pension, effort is just resource depletion. It's not learning.
So you mentioned the specific operating conditions the brain needs. We know it's not a machine. What are those conditions, and how do these long sessions just systematically dismantle them?
Right, so we established the brain as a living system. It learns optimally when it feels safe, curious, light, and interested.
Okay, safe, curious, light, and interested.
Long sessions kill curiosity first. I mean, by the time you're in hour 3, that desire to know more is completely gone. It's been replaced by a desperate, strained desire to just be done.
I know that feeling.
We all do. Energy's gone, focus is fragmented. All you're doing is waiting for time to pass, and time without attention cannot, by definition, create lasting memory.
And the damage is deeper than just the lost knowledge, isn't it? It's about what the brain learns from the experience itself.
The conditioning is profound. The source material notes that the brain quietly internalizes this dangerous lesson. This subject, my new skill, this language, takes too much from me. It is exhausting.
And this conditioning, this is what creates resistance.
Yes. The next time you even think about starting a session, you feel tired before you even open the book. That preemptive fatigue, that lack of desire, that's the pure expression of resistance.
And resistance is the enemy of momentum.
The absolute enemy of momentum. Momentum is that gentle, natural force that keeps you moving forward day by day. When learners lose momentum, they stop and they feel confused. They say, I just ran out of steam.
But they didn't just run out of steam.
No, they ran out of steam because the long sessions taught their brain that the activity was a painful burden.
And that burden is tied to pressure, right? The long study block is inherently a high-pressure event, even if you're the only one creating that pressure.
The pressure is almost always internal. It's from expectation. The thought process is, I must see massive results today because I sacrificed my entire Saturday for this. I cannot waste this block of time.
Which sounds so noble and disciplined on the surface.
It does, but neurologically, it's detrimental. Those thoughts trigger a state of tension, the brain tightens, it becomes stressed, and it shifts into a kind of survival or triage mode.
And learning just can't happen in survival mode.
It's the ultimate antithesis of deep learning. Whether you're learning, complex math or the subtle intonation of a new language, the brain needs to be relaxed, calm, and open to notice patterns and make connections. When it's tense and in survival mode, it prioritizes simply getting through the time, not forming lasting connections. It sees the 5 hours as an emergency to be endured.
Not an opportunity for growth.
Not at all.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If the problem is the brain closing down because of pressure, stress, and energy depletion, then the solution has to be, well, it's to eliminate that pressure and protect the energy.
We have to flip the script entirely.
Oh.
We must fundamentally shift the focus from the heroic quantity of hours logged to the protected quality of the cognitive state we achieve. And that, right there, is the genius of the short session.
The source material is very specific about the ideal duration. It says 10, 15, or maybe 20 minutes, no more. And I could already hear the high achiever listener thinking, that's nothing, that's too short.
It feels insignificant. How can I learn anything meaningful in 15 minutes?
Right. So what's the mechanism? Why does it work?
The mechanism is psychological safety. This is the game changer. When your brain knows definitively that the activity is brief, there is zero inherent sense of danger or stress.
So it doesn't have to panic about running out of energy.
Exactly. It says, okay, 15 minutes, I can easily manage this. The finish line is visible from the start. And this instantly removes the internal tension we just talked about. The brain stays open, receptive, and ready to process new information. And that state is the absolute prerequisite for deep learning.
So the shortness of the session is basically a psychological trick to keep the brain's guard down and its processing units open.
That's a great way to put it. And this repeated success, this feeling of completion, starts building what we call self-trust.
Self-trust.
Every single completed short session, 15 minutes of perfect, focused listening, sends a clean, powerful message to the deeper parts of your brain. This activity is manageable. This is possible. I can execute this commitment successfully.
I see the contrast now. Because long sessions, they often break self-trust. You commit to 5 hours, you fail to maintain focus after one, and then you feel guilty, which just compounds the sense of failure.
Right. But short sessions are designed for success, and that success builds resilience over time.
And we're protecting a very limited resource, mental energy.
And focus, yes. Long sessions just greedily consume this finite supply until the tank is completely empty. The intelligent strategy with short sessions is that you stop before you feel tired.
Okay, but that seems like an utter waste of potential. If I have a 15-minute session scheduled, and at minute 13 I feel fantastic, like I could easily do another 15, why on earth would I stop?
Because that is the critical lesson you must teach your brain for long-term adherence. It's a strategic move. You are teaching it. I finished this activity while still feeling sharp, fresh, and positive.
So you're optimizing the emotional memory of the experience.
Precisely. The brain is hardwired through positive neurochemistry dopamine release associated with completion and accomplishment to repeat positive, pleasant experiences. So it's motivated organically to come back tomorrow.
This connects directly to what the sources call the next time effect. And this is a profound concept. What you feel at the end of your study session literally decides the psychological barrier or lack thereof for your next session.
It's everything. If you start when you're cognitively exhausted and strained, the mere thought of the next session already feels heavy. It's a negative repulsive force, an obligation you have to push yourself through.
But if you stop while you're still fresh,
Still curious, still feeling successful, the memory of that positive, pleasant ending creates a powerful pull.
a pull, not a push.
A pull, and that pull draws you back the next day without you having to rely on motivation or willpower. And that subtle but profound shift is the engine of true sustainable learning.
Let's make this concrete with a comparison from the source. Learner A studies for 3 hours, one heroic session, once a week on Saturday.
Okay.
Learner B studies for just 15 minutes every single day, 7 days a week.
After 1 month, the difference is just stark. Learner A is likely experiencing these cycles of burnout and guilt. They know intellectually that those 3 hours weren't really 3 hours of deep absorption.
It was maybe 45 minutes of good learning surrounded by hours of distraction and forcing it.
Right. They're relying on these heroic bursts of motivation that come and go.
And what about Learner B?
Learner B has accumulated 105 minutes of high-quality focused time over 7 days. But more importantly, they feel calm, consistent, and confident.
Consistency. That seems to be the key.
Consistency, the ability to execute the action again and again without stopping, gives learner B this immense biological and structural advantage. They have more contact, greater exposure, and critically more frequent spaced repetition.
So the lesson is clear. Deep learning isn't about heroics, it's about habit.
It's all about habit. Habit is automatic action, something you do without asking, should I study today? It's like putting on your seatbelt or brushing your teeth.
You just do it.
You just do it. And short sessions are the perfect vehicle for training a habit because the action is so small it's difficult to fail. Long, exhausting sessions rely entirely on motivation, and motivation is fickle. Habit is dependable.
So we're aiming for a learning ritual that's so small, so quick, that your brain doesn't have time to negotiate its way out of it.
That's the goal.
And we have to connect this back to how memory itself actually works, the spacing effect. If we connect this to the bigger picture, memory fundamentally requires gaps.
Yes, the gap, the space, the quiet downtime between learning moments. When you finish a short, focused session, your brain doesn't just shut off. It continues quietly in the background, a process we call memory consolidation.
Okay, and what's happening during consolidation?
That's where the hippocampus organizes, revisits, and puts new information into the proper structure for long-term storage. It often happens during downtime or even during sleep.
So when you try to cram 5 hours of information into a single sitting, you're providing no gap. You're just constantly jamming new input into an already full, tired, short-term buffer.
Which forces the brain to discard valuable information to make room for the next piece. It's just information overload.
But short, frequent sessions create those natural, necessary gaps.
They do. And think of the neurological benefit. You're exposed to a complex phrase today like, I was running late this morning. You hear it again in a different context tomorrow. That second exposure triggers a feeling of recognition.
Oh, I know this. I saw this yesterday.
Exactly. And it's that feeling of recognition and retrieval spaced out over time that powerfully strengthens the neural connection and pushes the concept into long-term retention. You need the gap for the brain to do that initial sorting so the next exposure can be reinforcement, not just more new input.
So it's clear that 15 minutes is only powerful if it's used correctly. The sources emphasize a crucial quality rule. A short session isn't about speed. It's not about trying to rush a bunch of activities into that small window.
No, it's about doing one small thing well, with almost surgical precision.
And the primary goal of that short session is what?
The mastery of undivided attention. Your focus must be fully, absolutely on a single, discrete task. This avoids the fragmentation and task switching that sabotages those long sessions.
So if the long session fails because of multitasking, the success of the short session relies entirely on the rule of one action.
The rule of one action. I love that. You choose one simple activity. You listen, or you read, or you repeat out loud.
But you cannot, and you should not, multitask.
Whoa.
We're talking about eliminating checking your phone, pausing to look up every single word, planning dinner while you're listening.
All of it. And the reason for this strict singularity is rooted in cognitive load theory. Learning is the process of linking new information to existing structures in your brain-forming connections.
Right.
When you attempt multiple tasks simultaneously, listening to complex audio while also translating and checking a notification, your brain is constantly incurring what's called a switching cost. And those vital connections, they either break or they're formed so quickly they just immediately decay.
It's like trying to have 4 important conversations at once. You hear all the sound, but you process none of the depth.
A perfect analogy. The audio might physically enter your sensory system, but your working memory is too overloaded with just prioritizing the tasks to actually encode or store it correctly.
So focused learning it's slow, it's deliberate.
By its very nature, yes. It is not optimized for speed or volume. It's optimized for depth. Short sessions are for quality. We are optimizing for the density of information transfer into long-term memory. We want to make sure every minute counts toward actual neural change.
Okay, to make this really actionable, let's give the listener some concrete, detailed ways to maximize that 10 or 15-minute window. Let's expand on those 3 key examples from the source material.
Great idea. Let's start with example 1, focused listening. Your objective is 10 minutes of uninterrupted audio immersion.
Okay, so what do?
You sit, you take a deep breath to settle your nervous system, and you just listen to something slightly above your comfort level. The focus here is not on total comprehension, it's on reception.
Reception. So I'm just tuning my ear to the sound, the rhythm, the pace.
That's it. And the crucial part here is the discipline of what you don't do.
Which is?
You do not pause every sentence to write down words. You do not try to translate every single noun or verb. Why? Because that constant pausing breaks the flow, it disrupts the rhythm the brain is trying to recognize, and it turns a beneficial listening exercise into a stressful translation assignment.
You want to let the pattern wash over you.
Let it wash over you and allow the brain to connect the sound to the meaning naturally over time.
Okay, that makes sense. What's next?
Example 2. Focused reading. This is not about reading a chapter. It's about deep engagement with a single short paragraph, maybe 50 to 100 words.
That's it, just one paragraph.
That's it. You read it slowly, once, just absorbing the structure. Then you read it a second time, specifically noticing how the sentences connect, what specific words are used to convey tone.
And this is where we inject the active learning part, right?
Right, right. After those 2 slow readings, you close the book and you perform one active task. Either you summarize the central idea of that paragraph out loud in your own words, or you write down 2 specific vocabulary words you intend to try and use later.
So you're testing retrieval and forcing the brain to consolidate that small unit of information immediately.
Exactly. The focus is on depth of attention on a tiny unit of material, not the volume of pages you get through.
Okay, and the third example.
Example 3. Focused repetition or shadowing. This is so powerful. You choose just one sentence, maybe a complex but common phrase from your audio or your reading.
One sentence.
One sentence. Your focus is pure muscle memory and natural cadence. You repeat it many times, not for speed, but for accuracy of sound.
So you start slowly, focusing on pronunciation.
Then you try to repeat it more naturally, matching the speed of the original speaker. And finally, and this is the deep learning component, you repeat it with feeling.
With feeling.
You give it the proper intonation, the emotion, the context, as if you were truly saying it in a real conversation. You repeat that one sentence 10 times. You've done one tiny thing, but your brain has learned an immense amount because your attention was absolute and your physical mouth was forced to adapt to a new pattern.
I can see how this would trigger guilt, though.
Yeah.
The learner looks back and thinks, I only listened for 10 minutes, or I only focused on one paragraph. That feels like laziness.
That guilt is the toxic hangover from the heroic effort mindset.
So how do we reframe that? How do we fight that feeling?
We have to realize that learning doesn't count pages. Learning counts change. If your brain became even a tiny bit different, if a new connection was made, if a phrase moved one step closer to being automatic, then the session worked perfectly.
So it's not lazy, it's intentional.
It's highly intentional. It's a purposeful use of time, performed with a deep respect for the brain's limited reserves of high-quality focus.
Now we come to what the source deems the single most important and, at the same time, the most counterintuitive idea for high achievers.
The strategic stop.
The strategic stop. The guiding principle is stop while it still feels easy.
This is the critical juncture. This is where you decide whether you're conditioning your brain for long-term success or for inevitable burnout. We've established that most learners stop studying only after they feel tired, frustrated, or can no longer focus.
At the point of cognitive exhaustion. And what does stopping at that point teach the brain?
It conditions your brain to believe that learning equals a state of strain, that learning means pushing through pain, or that learning means extreme tiredness.
And that creates the negative pull we talked about, making the next session feel heavy and repulsive.
Absolutely. So we want the exact opposite lesson to be learned. We want the brain to associate learning with lightness, safety, possibility.
So to be very clear, you must stop early. You must stop when you still feel clear, focused, and completely okay, even if you feel you have the capacity to squeeze in another 20 minutes.
Even then, especially then.
This is the moment I struggle with the most. I think a lot of people do. As a motivated person, that feeling of, I can do more, I should do more, is this massive internal siren song.
Yeah.
It feels fundamentally lazy to stop when you know you still have gas in the tank.
It does. It feels wrong at first.
So how do we overcome that guilt and that internal pressure to keep going?
You overcome it by reframing the action as strategy, not weakness. You have to consciously remind yourself that you are not maximizing today's output. You are maximizing tomorrow's willingness to start.
That's a powerful reframe.
Stopping early is a highly intelligent, advanced strategy to ensure you reach your long-term goal. The feeling that you could do more. That's the reward you bank for tomorrow.
So stopping while you're still fresh is essentially a positive reinforcement loop for future engagement.
Precisely. When you stop early, your brain remembers the session as a positive, pleasant, and highly successful experience. The subconscious message is immediate and clean. That activity wasn't hard, it wasn't draining, it didn't cost much energy.
And that positive memory makes starting next time feel easy and non-stressful.
It creates the powerful, self-repeating cycle we're aiming for. An easy start leads to a good feeling, which leads to an intentional early stop, which reinforces a strong desire to return the next day. You are optimizing for future motivation.
It sounds like we're treating the brain like an investment, not a battery that you have to drain to zero, but a strategic system that you nurture for compounding returns.
That is the perfect analogy, and this strategic stop ties back directly to memory consolidation and the need for those gaps. The source repeatedly emphasizes that learning does not stop when you stop studying.
Right. Your brain continues its vital work in the background.
The organization, the filing, the categorization of new data, it all happens quietly without your awareness.
And if you study until you're exhausted, your brain is too fatigued to do that vital post-session processing.
It's like trying to file complex documents when the office staff is already asleep at their desks from working overtime. The input is there, but the capacity to store it correctly is just gone.
But stopping early gives the brain that room to breathe, that cognitive space it needs.
It allows the natural subconscious processes of memory consolidation to occur unhindered. You are giving the information the space and time it needs to settle into long-term memory, ensuring that the next time you return, the concepts are firmer, the vocabulary is more available, and the whole process just feels lighter.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, who's trying to fit this complex, demanding goal into an already busy, demanding life?
Well, the central takeaway is that you already have enough time. The struggle is not a lack of hours.
You don't need to conjure up these magical 5-hour blocks on the weekend.
Not at all. What you need is better timing, deciding when and precisely how long you engage with the material in a way that respects your natural cognitive limits.
So short sessions aren't the easy way out. They're not an excuse for minimal effort.
No, they are the highly intelligent, evidence-based way in. They respect your brain's need for low-stress conditions, they respect your finite energy supply, and they work with your daily rhythm rather than trying to force an unsustainable structure against it.
So if you want your deep learning to feel natural, not painful, and you want the knowledge to actually stay with you for years, not just weeks,
The answer is to commit to short, intensely focused sessions every single day, even on the days you feel busy or tired, especially on those days.
because small steps taken daily, quietly, change everything.
They build that unbreakable habit and the consistent momentum that motivation alone can never provide. You're optimizing for long-term consistency over short-term heroism.
Which I think leaves us with a final thought.
It raises an important question for you to consider. Since small steps taken daily quietly change everything, what is the smallest, most focused action you can intentionally choose to integrate into your routine right now?
Even just 10 minutes of absolute undivided attention.
Exactly. What's that one small thing you can do to build momentum, knowing that the real lasting learning actually happens in that quiet background gap after you strategically decide to stop?